The Arizona desert was already turning black beneath the rising moon when Evelyn Carter ran. She didn't know how long she'd been riding. She didn't know exactly where she was going. She only knew where she could never return. Behind her, somewhere beyond the hills and miles of open desert, stood the ranch where she had spent the last 3 years living under her uncle's control. Every hoofbeat carried her farther from that place, yet every sound in the darkness made her fear that Silas Carter's men had found her. Evelyn looked over her shoulder. Nothing, only the endless desert. She pulled the worn shawl tighter around her shoulders. Her hands were shaking. She had never done anything like this before. For 23 years, other people had decided everything for her: where she would live, what she would wear, who she could speak to. And now Silas had decided whom she would marry. That had been the final thing Evelyn could not accept. Victor Hale. The name alone made her stomach tighten. Victor was wealthy, respected, and feared. To everyone in town, he appeared to be a successful rancher. But Evelyn knew the man behind the polished clothes and charming smile. She had seen his temper. She had seen the way he treated servants. She had heard the threats he whispered when nobody else was listening. And Silas had told her she would marry him within the month. "You don't get to refuse," Silas had said. "You belong to this family." Evelyn had looked at him then and understood something. She did not belong to him. She belonged to herself. That night, she stole away. She took only a small leather bag containing some bread, a little water, her mother's photograph, and the few coins she had managed to hide over the years. She left everything else behind, including the life she had once believed she would have. But freedom was not as simple as walking away. By midnight, her horse had become exhausted. So had she. The desert stretched in every direction. Her water bottle was almost empty. Her horse stumbled. "Easy," Evelyn whispered. The animal stopped near a dry riverbed. Evelyn climbed down. Her legs were trembling. She looked at the sky. Millions of stars covered the darkness. For a moment, the beauty of it almost made her forget the danger. Then she heard a distant sound. A horse. Her heart stopped. Evelyn immediately reached for the small knife hidden beneath her dress. The sound grew louder. She backed toward the rocks. A rider appeared on the ridge. Moonlight revealed a tall man sitting silently on a dark horse. Evelyn's breathing became rapid. Silas, one of his men. She tightened her grip on the knife. The rider slowly approached, descended the ridge. But something was different. He wasn't wearing Silas's ranch colors. He wasn't carrying a lantern. He wore buckskin clothing, a dark leather vest, and a belt carrying a knife and other practical tools. His long black hair was tied behind his shoulders. He was Apache. Evelyn had heard stories about Apache warriors all her life. Most of them had been told by frightened settlers. Stories of danger, stories of raids, stories designed to make people afraid. But the man approaching her did not behave like the monster she had imagined. He stopped his horse several yards away. He looked at her, then at the exhausted horse, then at the water container beside her. Evelyn raised her knife. "Stay away." The man didn't move. His eyes remained calm. "I won't hurt you." Evelyn's voice trembled. "Please leave." He looked at her again. "You're lost." "No." The answer came quickly. "I know exactly where I'm going." The man glanced toward the empty desert. "Do you?" Evelyn said nothing. The warrior dismounted. He reached toward his horse. Evelyn raised her knife higher. He stopped. Then, very slowly, he removed a water container from his saddle. He placed it on the ground. He stepped away. "Drink." Evelyn stared at the water. She desperately wanted it, but fear kept her frozen. Why? The warrior shrugged. Because you're thirsty. She didn't understand. People did not simply give things away. Not in her experience. Finally, Evelyn stepped forward. She grabbed the container. She drank. The water felt like life itself. When she lowered it, tears were running down her cheeks. The warrior noticed. He didn't ask why she was crying. Instead, he asked, "Who is following you?" Evelyn froze. No one. He looked toward the horizon. "You are running from someone." She swallowed. "Yes." "Who?" "My uncle." "Why?" Evelyn looked down. She could not explain everything. Not to a stranger. Not to an Apache warrior. Not to anyone. But then she remembered Victor. She remembered Silas's hand gripping her wrist. She remembered the locked doors, the threats, the wedding dress already ordered without her permission. Her voice broke. "He wants to send me back." The warrior looked directly at her. "Back where?" "My uncle's ranch." "Why don't you go?" Evelyn laughed bitterly. "Because I escaped." The warrior studied her face. "What will happen if he finds you?" Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "He'll force me to marry someone." The warrior remained silent. Then Evelyn whispered the sentence that had been trapped inside her since the night she fled. "Please." Her voice cracked. "Don't send me back." For the first time, the warrior's expression softened. He understood. She wasn't simply lost. She was running for her life. He took a slow breath. "I won't send you back." Evelyn stared at him. She expected another condition, a demand, a price. Nothing came. "Why?" "Because you asked me not to." She couldn't believe it. "What is your name?" "Kai." "I'm Evelyn." Kai nodded. He pointed toward the distant hills. "I have a camp nearby." Evelyn hesitated. She was terrified of trusting anyone. But she was also exhausted. Kai noticed her uncertainty. "You can stay tonight." "And tomorrow?" "You decide." Those words struck her harder than anything else. "You decide." No one had said those words to her in years. Kai walked toward his horse. Evelyn followed slowly. His camp was small. A fire, a bedroll, a few supplies. No walls, no locked doors, no guards, no chains. Kai gave Evelyn a blanket. She expected him to sleep beside the fire. Instead, he walked several yards away. "You sleep there," he said. "And you?" "Here." He pointed toward the other side of the fire. Evelyn looked at him. "You're not afraid I'll leave?" Kai gave the smallest hint of a smile. "You're free to." That night, Evelyn lay beneath the blanket. For the first time in years, she slept without fear of a locked door opening. She woke before sunrise. Kai was already awake. He was preparing food. He placed a small portion near her. Evelyn sat up. "Why are you helping me?" Kai continued preparing breakfast. "Because you needed help." "That simple?" "Yes." She studied him. "Don't you want something in return?" Kai finally looked at her. "No." Evelyn looked away. Her eyes filled with tears again. She had forgotten what uncomplicated kindness felt like. Over the next few days, Evelyn slowly recovered. Kai never pressured her to tell him everything. He never touched her without permission. He never demanded gratitude. Instead, he taught her things. How to recognize animal tracks. How to find water. How to read the direction of the wind. How to remain calm when frightened. "You need to know these things," he explained. "Why?" "Because someday you may be alone." Evelyn frowned. "You think you'll leave?" Kai's expression became distant. "I don't know." The answer frightened her. But Kai wanted her to understand something important. Protection should not create another prison. He wanted her capable of surviving without him. One afternoon, Evelyn successfully identified a set of horse tracks. Kai nodded. "Good." She smiled. "You're proud of me." I said, "Good. That means you're proud." Kai looked away. Evelyn laughed softly. It was the first genuine laugh he had heard from her, and it was the first time Evelyn realized something about Kai. Behind his silence was loneliness. He was not simply a man who preferred being alone. He was a man who had been hurt so deeply that loneliness had become easier than trust. She didn't know his whole story yet, but she wanted to. And Kai didn't know Evelyn's entire story either, but he had already made one decision. If Silas came looking for her, he would not hand her over, because Evelyn had not asked him to become her master. She had asked him to become the person who would not betray her. And Kai had given her his word. I won't send you back. Neither of them knew that those 5 words would eventually change both their lives. Evelyn had escaped the only home she had ever known. Kai had spent years escaping his own painful memories. Now, beneath the endless Arizona sky, 2 wounded strangers had found something neither had expected. A beginning. Not love yet, not trust completely, but safety. And sometimes, for someone who has spent years being afraid, safety is the first place where love can eventually grow. The morning after Evelyn Carter arrived at Kai's camp, she woke to the sound of a crackling fire. For a few seconds, she forgot where she was. Then she remembered. The desert, the escape, the Apache warrior, the promise. I won't send you back. Evelyn slowly sat up. The blanket Kai had given her was still wrapped around her shoulders. The fire was burning several feet away, and Kai was kneeling beside it, preparing breakfast. He looked exactly as he had the night before, quiet, watchful, and distant. But there was something different about the way Evelyn saw him now. He no longer looked like a stranger. He looked like the first person who had protected her without asking for anything in return. Kai noticed that she was awake. You're hungry. It wasn't a question. Evelyn nodded. He handed her a small piece of bread and some cooked meat. She accepted it. Thank you. Kai nodded. For several minutes, they ate in silence. Evelyn finally broke the quiet. Why do you live here alone? Kai's hands stopped. For a moment she thought he might refuse to answer. Instead he said, Because I chose to. But why? Kai looked toward the distant mountains. Sometimes, being alone is easier. Evelyn understood that answer more than he realized. She had spent years surrounded by people and had never felt more alone. You don't have anyone? Kai's eyes darkened. I had people. Past tense. Evelyn didn't ask again. She knew what it meant when someone said had instead of have. After breakfast, Kai began preparing to leave. Evelyn stood. Where are you going? To check the northern trail. Why? There were tracks yesterday. Whose? I don't know. Evelyn immediately felt nervous. Kai saw it. What if someone comes? You'll hear them. And then what? Kai looked at her. Do not panic. He showed her where to hide if strangers approached. He pointed toward a narrow path between 2 rocks. You can reach the creek from there. Evelyn frowned. You've thought about this before. Kai nodded. People sometimes travel through this land. What should I do if someone asks about you? Tell them nothing. And if they ask about me? Kai's expression hardened. Tell them nothing. Evelyn realized he was serious. Before leaving, Kai handed her a small knife. She stared at it. I can't use this. You can learn. He demonstrated how to hold it safely. You don't use it unless you have to. Evelyn nodded. Kai mounted his horse and disappeared beyond the ridge. For the first time since arriving, Evelyn was completely alone. She looked around the camp. It was strangely peaceful. There were no locked doors, no shouting, no footsteps coming toward her room. She sat beside the fire and began repairing the torn edge of her dress. When Kai returned several hours later, he found the camp cleaner than he had left it. The blankets were folded. The cooking utensils had been washed. The firewood was neatly stacked. Kai looked at Evelyn. You did this? She shrugged. It needed doing. You don't have to work. I know. Then why? Kai didn't answer, but Evelyn noticed the faintest change in his face. He looked almost pleased. Days passed. A quiet routine formed between them. Kai hunted. Evelyn cooked. Kai checked the trails. Evelyn repaired clothing. In the afternoons, Kai taught her how to survive in the wilderness. At first, Evelyn struggled. She couldn't tell one trail from another. She couldn't recognize animal tracks. She didn't know how to judge the direction of the wind. But Kai was patient. "Look carefully," he said. Evelyn crouched beside him. "What am I looking for?" "The ground." She frowned. "The ground?" Kai pointed. "Broken grass." She looked closer. "Something passed here." "Yes." "What?" "Horse." She smiled. "I saw that." Kai nodded. "You did." It became a small game between them. Every day he taught her something new, and every day she became more confident. One afternoon, Kai brought his spare horse closer. "You're going to ride." Evelyn's eyes widened. "I don't think so." "You rode before." "Only once." "You survived." "That isn't encouraging." Kai almost smiled. Almost. Evelyn climbed onto the horse. The animal shifted beneath her. She grabbed the saddle. "It's moving." Kai looked at her. She glared at him. Very funny. For the first time, Kai actually laughed. It was quiet and brief. But Evelyn heard it. She stared at him. "You laughed." Kai's face became serious again. "No." "You did." "No, you definitely did." Kai turned away. Evelyn laughed. Something inside Kai softened. He had forgotten what it felt like to hear laughter around his camp. For years his life had been silence. But Evelyn was changing that. She wasn't trying to. She simply existed as herself. And slowly, Kai began to care. That realization frightened him, because caring meant risking loss. He knew what loss could do. Years earlier, Kai had trusted people completely. Then violence had taken them from him. He had buried the people he loved. After that, he stopped building attachments. He believed loneliness was safer. But Evelyn had somehow entered the small world he had built around himself. One evening, Evelyn noticed an old necklace hanging from Kai's belongings. Who did that belong to? Kai became still. "My sister." Evelyn immediately regretted asking. "I'm sorry." Kai stared into the fire. "She was younger than me." "What happened?" Kai was silent for a long time. "She died." Evelyn didn't ask anything else. Instead, she quietly moved closer to the fire. "I lost my parents too," she said. Kai looked at her. "I was young." Two people sat beside the same fire, carrying different griefs. For the first time, Kai understood that Evelyn wasn't simply a frightened woman he had rescued. She was someone who understood loss. Someone who understood what it meant to have your world taken away. And Evelyn realized that Kai's silence wasn't cruelty, it was pain. Their trust grew quietly. Then, one morning, everything changed. Kai returned from scouting with a serious expression. Evelyn knew immediately. "What happened?" "Riders." Her heart dropped. "How many?" "5. "Who?" "I don't know." But Kai's eyes told her something else. He suspected they were looking for her. Evelyn sat down. "They found me." Kai shook his head. "Not yet. But they will." "Yes. What are we going to do?" Kai looked toward the horizon. "We leave." Evelyn's voice trembled. "Where?" "West." "For how long?" "Until they stop searching." She looked down. "I don't want to run anymore." Kai turned toward her. Evelyn's eyes were filled with tears. "I ran because I was afraid." She swallowed. "But if I keep running forever, I'll never have a life." Kai understood. He had spent years doing exactly that, running from pain, running from memories, running from attachment. He suddenly realized something. He could help Evelyn escape her past. without becoming another person controlling her future. You're right, he said. Evelyn looked at him. Kai continued. You need to decide what happens next. No one lets me decide. I will. She stared at him. Why? Because it's your life. Those words brought tears to her eyes. Kai stepped closer. You can stay. You can leave. You can go to the town. You can keep traveling. But I won't choose for you. Evelyn wiped her face. You really mean that? Kai nodded. She looked toward the horizon, then back at him. I want to stay with you. Kai's expression changed. Are you sure? Yes. Why? Evelyn smiled faintly. Because I feel safe here. Kai looked away. The words affected him more than he wanted to admit. Nobody had called his camp safe in years. Nobody had trusted him like this. That night, they sat beside the fire. Evelyn finally asked him the question that had been waiting between them. Are you lonely? Kai looked at the flames. Yes. The honesty surprised her. Then why don't you let people get close? Kai was silent. Because people leave. Evelyn whispered. Not everyone. Kai looked at her. She held his gaze. I won't promise forever, she said. But I won't disappear without telling you. Kai's eyes softened. It wasn't a grand promise. It wasn't romantic. But it was real. And for Kai, real was enough. The following morning, he made another decision. They would travel toward a nearby settlement. Evelyn needed a chance to reclaim her legal freedom. Kai would protect her if danger came, but he would not decide her future. As they prepared the horses, Evelyn looked at him. Kai? Yes? Thank you. For what? For teaching me that I can survive without being controlled. Kai nodded. Then he said something she would remember for the rest of her life. I didn't make you strong, Evelyn. He looked directly at her. You already were. Evelyn smiled. For the first time she believed him. But neither of them knew that the riders following their trail were getting closer. The peaceful days were ending. Soon Evelyn would have to face the man she had spent years fearing. And Kai would have to decide whether protecting Evelyn meant fighting for her, or trusting her enough to fight beside him. Their journey toward the settlement had begun, and with every mile, the bond between them became stronger. Not because Evelyn needed Kai to save her, but because for the first time, she had found someone who wanted her to become strong enough to save herself. The sun had barely risen when Evelyn Carter and Kai reached the small frontier settlement. After days of traveling across the Arizona wilderness, Evelyn was exhausted, but something inside her had changed. She was still afraid. She still woke from nightmares. She still expected someone to appear behind her and drag her back to the life she had escaped. But she was no longer the same woman who had collapsed beside the dry riverbed. She could ride. She could recognize tracks. She knew how to find water. Most importantly, she had learned how to speak for herself. Kai had never promised that he could solve every problem for her. He had only promised one thing. He would not send her back. As they entered the settlement, Evelyn looked around nervously. People moved between wooden buildings. Horses stood outside the general store. Children ran through the dusty street. A blacksmith worked near a small forge. For an ordinary person, it was simply another frontier town. For Evelyn, it represented something much bigger. A chance. A real chance to build a life that belonged to her. Kai noticed her expression. You can leave whenever you want, he said. Evelyn looked at him. I know. And you don't have to stay here. I know. She smiled. You say that every time. Because you need to remember it. Evelyn looked toward the town. I want to stay. Kai nodded. They found a local official who agreed to hear Evelyn's story. For the first time, Evelyn would tell someone outside Kai exactly what had happened. She sat inside a small wooden office. Her hands were shaking. Kai remained near the door. He didn't speak for her. He simply waited. The official looked at Evelyn. Tell me why you left your uncle's ranch. Evelyn opened her mouth. Before she could speak, the office door burst open. Evelyn! Her blood turned cold. She knew that voice. Silas Carter stood in the doorway. Beside him stood Victor Hale. Behind them were several armed riders. Evelyn immediately stood. Her breathing became shallow. Silas looked furious. There you are. Evelyn stepped backward. Kai moved slightly forward. Silas pointed toward him. That man took her. Kai remained calm. Evelyn looked at the official. He's lying. Silas laughed. She isn't thinking clearly. Victor stepped forward. She belongs to her family. Evelyn's hands began trembling. Those words, she belongs to her family, they were the same words Silas had used for years. The old fear returned. She suddenly felt like she was back at the ranch. Locked doors, cold hallways, Silas's voice, Victor's smile. She almost couldn't breathe. Then she remembered Kai's lessons. Look around. Breathe. Do not panic. Remember who you are. She inhaled slowly. Kai noticed. He didn't touch her. He simply looked at her. That look gave her courage. The official turned toward Silas. Do you have legal authority over this woman? Silas hesitated. She is my niece. That isn't what I asked. Silas became angry. She has no money. Evelyn spoke quietly. I do. Everyone looked at her. Silas's expression changed. My father left me an inheritance. The official frowned. Silas tried to interrupt. Evelyn continued. My uncle took control of it after my parents died. Victor looked uncomfortable. Evelyn kept going. He told me I had no choice about anything. Silas shouted, Enough! Evelyn flinched. Kai's hand moved toward his belt, but Evelyn raised her hand. No. Kai stopped. She looked at Silas. I will speak. The room became silent. Silas stared at her. For years, Evelyn had lowered her head whenever he raised his voice. Not today. You arranged my marriage, she said. Silas sneered. For your own good. No. Evelyn's voice became stronger. You arranged it because Victor wanted my property. Victor's face turned pale. Silas stepped forward. You have no proof. Evelyn reached into her bag. She pulled out several folded letters. I have proof. She placed them on the official's desk. They were letters between Silas and Victor. Letters discussing her inheritance. Letters discussing the marriage. Letters proving that the marriage was never about Evelyn's happiness. It was about money. Read them carefully. Silas became nervous. Victor tried to leave. The official ordered him to stay. Evelyn looked at Kai. He nodded. Not proudly, not possessively, simply reassuring her. She continued telling the truth. She explained how Silas controlled her movements, how he threatened her, how he told her she belonged to him, how she escaped because she feared what would happen if she stayed. By the time she finished, the room was silent. The official looked toward Silas. You have no legal right to force her into marriage. Silas's face hardened. This isn't over. Kai finally spoke. No. Silas looked at him. Kai's voice remained quiet. It isn't. That evening, Evelyn stayed at a small boarding house. Kai remained outside. He didn't enter her room. He didn't demand that she stay close to him. He gave her space. But Silas wasn't finished. Late that night, Evelyn heard footsteps. Her heart began racing. The door opened. One of Silas's men stepped inside. You're coming with us. Evelyn backed away. No. He grabbed her wrist. Evelyn remembered Kai's training. She twisted her arm, pulled free, and ran. The man chased her. She reached the back door. Outside, the settlement was dark. She ran toward the stable. Another man appeared. Evelyn turned. She saw Kai. He had heard the commotion. Between her and the men, his expression was calm, but his eyes were hard. Leave her. One man reached for his weapon. Kai stepped forward. The man stopped. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Evelyn heard something inside herself. She didn't want to hide behind Kai. She didn't want him to fight every battle. She stepped beside him. "I won't go back." Silas's men looked at her. "You don't have a choice." Evelyn shook her head. "I do." She reached for the small knife Kai had given her. She didn't raise it. She simply held it firmly. "I choose my own life." The men hesitated. Then distant voices could be heard. The official and several townspeople were approaching. Silas's men fled. The next morning, the authorities confronted Silas. The letters Evelyn had produced, combined with witness statements and financial records, revealed enough evidence to investigate his actions. His control over Evelyn's inheritance was challenged. His attempt to force her into marriage was exposed, and the story he had told the town collapsed. Evelyn was finally free. But freedom brought an unexpected emptiness. She had spent so long fighting to escape that she had never considered what she would do after escaping. Kai found her sitting outside the settlement. "You're quiet," she smiled. "I'm thinking." "About what? What happens now?" Kai sat several feet away. "You decide." She looked at him. "You always say that." "Because it's true." "Should go." Evelyn's smile disappeared. "Go where?" "West." "Why? You're safe." She stared at him. "That means you're leaving?" Kai nodded. "You don't need me anymore." Evelyn stood. "You think that's why I stayed?" Kai didn't answer. She stepped closer. "You never made me feel like I owed you anything." Kai looked at her. "You gave me choices." "Yes." "You taught me to survive." "Yes." "You protected me." "Yes." She took a breath. "And now I choose you." Kai's eyes softened. "Evelyn, I don't want you to stay because you promised to protect me." She shook her head. "I want you to stay because I want you here." Kai looked away. "You can have any life you want. I know. You can return to town. I know. You can start a ranch. I know. Then why me?" Evelyn smiled through tears. "Because when I had nothing, you didn't ask what you could get from me." She stepped closer. "You gave me water. You gave me shelter. You gave me a choice. And when I asked you not to send me back," her voice became soft, "you promised." Kai looked at her. "I know." Silence settled between them. Then Evelyn reached for his hand. Kai hesitated for a moment. Then he took hers. It was a simple gesture, but for both of them, it meant everything. Months later, Evelyn and Kai built a small home outside the settlement. It wasn't large. It didn't have expensive furniture. But it had something Evelyn had never had before. A door that locked from the inside. A home where she could choose whether to open it. A garden grew beside the house. Horses grazed nearby. Evelyn learned to ride confidently. Kai began smiling more. He still carried his old grief. Evelyn still carried scars from her past. Neither pretended those things had disappeared. They simply learned how to live with them. One evening, Evelyn stood outside watching the sunset. Kai approached. "You're thinking again." She smiled. "I was remembering the night we met." Kai nodded. "You were holding a knife. You looked terrifying. I was trying to give you water." "I didn't know that." Kai smiled. "You thought I was going to hurt you." "I was afraid of everyone." He looked toward the horizon. "Not anymore." Evelyn shook her head. "No." She looked at him. "Not everyone." Kai understood. The woman who had once run into the desert because she believed there was nowhere safe, had finally found a place where she could breathe. And the lonely warrior, who believed attachment only brought pain, had discovered that caring for someone did not always mean losing them. Sometimes it meant finding a reason to stay. Their love did not begin with possession. It began with a promise I won't send you back. But the deeper promise came later. Evelyn was no longer a woman who needed someone to save her. Kai was no longer a man who believed he had to live alone. They had chosen one another freely, and that was what made their love stronger than anything either of them had known before. Because the safest place Evelyn ever found wasn't a building, it wasn't a ranch, it wasn't even the small home they eventually built. Her safest place was the freedom to choose, and the man who had first given her that freedom had become the person she chose to share her life with.